your life.
Taking Charge with successful businessman, world-renowned speaker, and best-selling author, Mark Januszewski. This is the only podcast where we end the self-help hustle and heartache and arm our listeners with everything they need to access a remarkable power within, a power beyond measure. Mark J. is the creator of the famous Master Key Experience, which publishes annually a success rate of over 98% happier, healthier, and more successful people. Mark co-created the Master Key Experience, combining science and spirituality with his wife, over 30 scientists, and the illuminated ones spanning 4,000 years. You'll quickly discover that there really are no common people. There is greatness within you, and this podcast will help you find and develop your greatness. The best news? It's in you already, and so it's free. I welcome you to our host, Mark J., creator of the Master Key Experience.
Hey, aloha. This is episode 4 of Taking Charge with Mark J. Today, Richard Bliss Brooke joins me on the topic the audience loves, which is transforming a vision into reality. Richard brings the good stuff. If you're someone who's determined, in other words, not trying is really deciding to fail before you begin, right? If you're determined to prosper, you'll want to listen to this a few times and share it with your friends. Everybody knows that's been on this podcast before. Everybody knows that if your friends are happy, you're 15% happier. And if their friends are happy, you're 20% happier. So spread the word, okay? You can check out more about Richard, and the podcast at our podcast page, where we've made some nice notes for you. And Richard's added in some really great things that he's doing, including a huge event in May of 2020 that you don't want to miss. And all that information has been posted up, as well as notes on Richard, and as well as Richard's tips inside this podcast, or what we call the summary notes, at masterkeyexperience.com. So check that out, masterkeyexperience.com. This is a really, really important thing to know about Richard and why I asked him to be on here. His credentials, we could go on for about an hour. He started as a kid. He was working on a chicken farm. And, the stories are legendary about him. I'm going to ask him to tell one of them. But, he was working on a chicken farm, and eventually, in a short time, after borrowing some money, was earning $50,000 a month. And it's been one success, indirect sales after another, and some failures mixed in there. The thing that really struck my attention was when I saw him dress up in a Superman outfit, only it said MLM, in Las Vegas, and interview people. And I said, here's a guy that's lost his self-consciousness for a greater cause. And as I got to know a little bit about him, I became intrigued. And then he called me up one day, and, he said, I want to come visit you. And I'm like, what do you want? And he said, I'm Richard Bliss Brooke, which I said, as you know from the Master Key course, we're all about following your bliss. If you're not following your bliss, you're wasting the life you were given. But anyway, so I figured, well, Tom Schreider must have put him up to this, because Tom knows I'm all about follow your bliss. But anyway, he was kind enough to stay gracious in the call, came over here with his, at that time, brand new bride, Kimmy, and a wonderful, wonderful humility and graciousness to the man. And again, we could talk about the millions of dollars he's made, and the house in Idaho, and Carmel, and the ranch, and all the, let's talk about character. What I saw was a very different approach. I'm kind of angry at the network marketing industry because they've abandoned training distributors. Richard, on the other hand, has taken a very different approach, saw that, and has done something about it, and wants to raise the consciousness of the entire industry around doing the right thing. And I saw this and I said, And I've seen it now day in and day out, where he is constantly walking away from easy money to do the right thing for people so that they can actually build themselves a revenue stream, maintain their dignity through their life, and will something to the next generation. Richard, it's always an honor to be with you and learn from you. And let me say one more thing. I was talking with Richard yesterday, and he said to me, "Is it okay if I get in your face here a little bit?" So, as you know, on these interviews we don't always have people that agree with me. Most of the time, they don't. But there are two things that all people have in common that are successful. Two things. And your job is to figure out what they are. The untrained eye won't see them, but it starts in the mind. The first thing always starts in the mind. So, Richard, how are you? Thanks for being on the call.
It's just counting down my camera. Oh, now I'm live. I'm live.
You're live. You're here, and you're on.
I can see you from my kitchen window.
By the way, Richard's a neighbor. He's a couple of islands over on Lanai. We're on Kauai today, and we're having a great time. Richard, let's hop right in here with vision. This is really my supposition is with Emerson's. So that's big company, agree or disagree. Emerson said, the ancestor of everything is thought. And we know your vision workshops are legendary. Your great book, Mach 2, like your hair's on fire. I want you to talk about the vision with Oprah and the 2 books a week for 7 years. Tell us that story.
All right. Well, I don't know if we have context for that story, but you and I remember read the same book 50 years ago. The cool thing about coming up in this profession and personal development 30 or 40 years ago was there were only about 4 books that you could read, and there weren't any audio tapes, or there was actually 33 1/3 records. If you wanted to listen to the audio, you had to listen to a record player. So the further you go back in your career, the more narrow, the source material is that you were going to study. So that's why you and I are kindred spirits, as we studied the same things, including Frank Bettcher's book, How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success. And it was he's an insurance salesman, or was, and it was, it's kind of really basic book. But one of the things that I got from that book was, when it comes to prospecting or selling or enrolling somebody, that the more modern perhaps way to look at it is sort of green eggs and ham, that if what you want to do is enroll somebody or sell somebody your product, you can approach them and you can ask them, and they're probably going to say no on the first attempt. And so then you can give up, which is what 95% of the people do. They hear the no and they go, oh, I guess they don't want my product. I guess they don't want to do what I'm doing. And so I'll go talk to somebody else. And of course you do need to go talk to somebody else, but then you also need to go back and green eggs and ham the person you talk to, because no, as we ought to know, doesn't mean no. It actually means not right now. Not right at this second that you decided to approach me. Am I ready to listen to this? And so I just learned all of this stuff about persistence and resiliency and creativity. And, that's what I got from Green Eggs and Ham is, hey, you want to buy my product? No. Well, what about in a box? What about with a fox, right? So you just keep coming back with a different approach. And, sooner or later, the odds are you're actually going to enroll somebody. So in 1995, I wrote that book that you held up called Mach 2. And I don't know, maybe I'm not good at time frames, but it might have been the late 90s or early 2000s. Oprah was doing her book club. She was, big on the books. And seems like everybody that she recommended the book, their book went right to #1. And so I got a great idea that Oprah maybe could read my book, and then my book would be famous. So I sent Oprah a book, and I also wrote Oprah a letter about network marketing. And oh my gosh, Oprah, if you could see how many lives are changed in this profession from the people that actually engage and do the things that Mark Januszewski teaches them to do, and succeeds on purpose. I mean, Oprah, you could start a revolution by launching your own network marketing company. I mean, you're all about health. You're all about transformation and personal development. You have this, hundreds of millions of people follow you. You could launch a network marketing company and be $1 billion overnight and change lives forever. I cast this whole vision for her. And I put the letter in the book and I sent it to her. But because I had read Frank Bettger's book and because I understood green eggs and ham, I sent my book to her and that letter twice a week, FedEx, so that I kind of had this vision, which was stupid, that, well, if I put it in the mail, she'll never see it. But if I FedEx it, somebody will bring it in and put it on her desk. Oh, you got a FedEx. And, that sounds silly to people today, but actually, 20 years ago when FedEx was new, if you got a FedEx, it was like, hey, you got a FedEx package, right?
It was like a telegram.
Right. So I sent her my book and this letter about network marketing, FedEx. But here's the key to the story. Twice a week. And my intention was until I get a response. And so, of course, I didn't personally do it. I delegated it to the person that ran the mailroom. And the interesting thing about doing something like that forever is whenever the person in the mailroom would change hands, like a different person would end up running the mailroom, sooner or later they would come up or send me a message and they said, hey, according to our systems here, we're supposed to FedEx this book twice a week to Harpo Productions. That's costing a lot of money, takes a lot of time. Do you still want to do that? And my answer was always, not only do I want to do it, but I don't ever want you to ask me again if I want to stop. And so the punchline is 7 years later. So that's 104 books a year times 7 years, 700 books, all individually sent in FedEx packages. I get a letter from Oprah. And I was actually in California, and my assistant in Idaho, she called me up and she said, you won't believe it. What? She said, we got a letter from Oprah. I said, open it, right? And I said, read it to me. And she said, okay, here you go. Dear Mr. Brooke, please cease and desist. It was from the legal department of Harpo Productions. It basically said, you're a nuisance sending all of these books. And when it comes to Oprah's business plans, I'm paraphrasing, we basically got that handled. We don't need your help for your business. So I stopped sending the books.
Right. And the business plans, I'm assuming.
Yes, I stopped sending all of it. But I haven't given up on Oprah.
I don't blame you.
I'm creating new strategies. I'm going to ask her if she's considered network marketing with a fox.
Yeah.
Which would be you.
Yeah, me. Yeah, exactly. Well, I have actually on my blog, on my press release on my blog, which is for 2020, Oprah's here interviewing me at the Sheraton, and curious about the class.
Right.
And nobody recognizes her because everybody in my class doesn't watch TV.
They don't. Yeah, they don't even know who Oprah
So I
is.
tell them not to worry about it.
Right.
Anyway,
But, she's going to sooner or later discover the Master Key to Riches class and Mark Januszewski, and
yeah,
and
yeah,
because she has such a huge tribe, and the number one problem her huge tribe has is self-esteem, self-motivation, confidence, vision, and actually the ability to produce intentionally a result in their life.
right.
That's the biggest problem her tribe has, and that's why they watch her. Is somehow they think, I think they watch her because they live vicarious through her. She's figured out how to get a vision and think her way to success and intentionally produce results. And so why not her tribe, right?
Right. Well, I think one of the things that you're bringing to the table, which people on the podcast, our veterans know or are learning, and our newbies are beginning to start to understand, is that the story isn't the point. The point is, it never stopped Richard from doing the other productive things. Let me explain what goes on here. I saw this girl and I fell right into her eyes and I fell in love. And her name was Mary. And I asked her out after the fake coffees for 2 or 3 weeks. And she said, no, we're friends. I don't want to destroy the friendship. Blah, blah, blah. I said, well, I'll ask in 60 days. She said, no, see, that's what I mean. I said, how about 3 months? She said, no. I said, how about 6? She said, no. I said, how about a year? She said, fine.
Yeah.
So a year goes by, and
Yeah.
I take a vow of celibacy, and I go to the gym, and I start making a little more money in my seafood business, and I get in better shape, and I'm reading, and I'm doing all these healthy things. And a year later, I say, "Hey, you want to go for coffee?" And she says, "Sure." And we sit down, and I say, so I had seen Cinema Paradiso, see, so I'm sure it's going to work, about the kid that stood outside the apartment for a
Right.
year, right? So that's me. And I said, Mary, do you know what today is? She said, it's Tuesday. I said, it's a year. Do you want to go out? And she said, I'm flattered. No. Okay. Now I go home, and what am I going to do? But I had done so many positive things for myself in the other areas of my life. I picked up Think and Grow Rich Again, which is the book Richard was talking about. And I saw this thing. I said, Master Key, I never saw that before. I pick up the Master Key system. 6 months later, I meet Davine, and here I am in Hawaii.
Yeah. And
Because what had really happened was I was determined to have a healthy relationship with a healthy person. And
right.
even though it wasn't her, you see, no is just the next step in the journey. And it's just another direction. And so I think what's really important, what Richard is sharing, was that he had a purpose, he had a positive mental attitude, he had a plan of action, he had a mastermind alliance. I think that's really important that you and I picked up out of Think and Grow Rich, but it was really the vision that was driving you in other areas of your life, so that if this doesn't work out with Oprah, you're not crushed. It's just another step or direction or a change of direction along the way. But
Yeah,
it's really was
I had a lot of Oprah strategies in play.
right, right, which is the drive. One of the things that I think is critical for our listeners, that is a distinguishing factor between the doers, like the Oprahs, like the Richards, like the Tom Chenaults, okay, and the ones that aren't, the ones that read self-help book after self-help book, which is almost an addiction. I mean, that's what this call is about. Taking charge, the full title, as everybody knows, is Taking Charge and Ending the Self-Help Hustle and Heartache. Stop reading the books. As Wallace Waddle said, read less, think more. You want to do great things, think great thoughts. But I love this thing is really an anchor for me in your book. We hope vaguely, but we dread precisely. And somehow in your vision shops, particularly towards the end of the book where you give the steps about the script, somehow you have found a way with your partners that take you seriously and they're taking their lives seriously to turn that around. And they seem to dread vaguely and hope precisely. How do we do that? How do you get people to do that? How do they shift that?
Well, you're speaking to the great catch-22 of self-motivation. The catch-22 of self-motivation is you actually have to be self-motivated to get self-motivated, which is why most people don't do it. But the process, if you can baby step your way to the motivation. So it's not like you go from not being motivated to, oh, now I'm on fire about everything. It's really just a tiny baby step process. And it almost always happens through some sort of coaching or mastermind alliance environment. I don't know very many people. I mean, I've had people read my book and send me, oh my gosh, you changed my life. But I'll bet I didn't, because if they're not in some kind of coaching program, or they're not in a mastermind alliance, or they're not like engaged as a student with a coach and a teacher and a process and study and rehearsal and practice and debrief and the intentional art of actually learning not only a new skill, but a new habit. And the skill and habit of self-motivation is to actually start paying attention, auditing what you think.
Right.
And how do you know what you've been thinking? That's pretty easy. Just look at what you've been doing. And because it's a reflection. There might be a little bit of a lag time, but if you want to know what your vision is, it's not what you wrote on a piece of paper, and it's not even necessarily what you have pinned up all over your house. That might be what you want your vision to be.
Your vision is your house, right?
Yeah, there's a big distinction between what you want your vision to be and what your vision is. If you want to know what it is, just look at what you've been doing for the last 90 days. If you've been trying, if you've been procrastinating, if you've been rationalizing, if you've been distracted, if you've been starting and stopping, if you've been worrying, if you've been stuck, if you've been struggling, if all that mess, then that's what your vision is. Now, how do you change it? Intentionally. And so intentionally is, the cool thing about human beings. Like if you look at the universe, just look like, watch one of those documentaries, Earth, that shows you all the different species all over the world and how they operate, how they propagate and survive. And like, if you look at all those species and then you look back over, I don't know, the last 500,000 years or 5,000 years or 50 million years or whatever, there's only one species on the planet that has risen above like where they started. And I'm not saying necessarily this is a good thing. So you and I in Hawaii, we probably think a lot about the movie The Graduate, where Dustin Hoffman says the future is plastic. And little did he know, in about 20 years, there's going to be the weight of plastic in the ocean is going to exceed the weight of fish. Yeah. So it's not necessarily a good thing that we're so creative, but the gift that we've been given as human beings is creative thought. We have the ability, and we are perhaps the only species in the history of biology that has the gift of intentional creative thought. Like, I can ask you a question, Mark. Hey, what would be your ideal, beautiful, extraordinary day tomorrow? What could you do? Who could you be in terms of your mood and your energy and like, what could you do tomorrow that could be your most extraordinary day? And you have the ability to think whatever you want to think about tomorrow. And I don't think a lobster can do that.
Right.
I don't think a pig can do that. I don't think a cow can do that. I think they pretty much do the same thing inside every day. Inside, just all they're doing is surviving and procreating, right?
Right. Right.
But we can do anything. And so, how do you change to hoping precisely? That's my least favorite word on the planet, but I get the point about
Right.
what hope is. How do we do that? We immerse ourselves in a program where we're coached and we're educated and we're held accountable and we practice and we learn a new habit, and it's all habitual. So now you and I, we are habitual positive thinkers.
Right.
And I wasn't always that way, and I don't think you were always that way. So we learned a new habit, we learned a new skill, we changed ourselves. The people that are stuck, that are always going to be stuck unless they change their mind, are the people who say, well, that's just the way I am. Well, gosh, if you and I were just the way we were 50 years ago, we'd be in prison or dead.
Or both. In my case, I'd be dead in a jail cell. You can't bury him yet. He's got more time to do.
Well, we have the ability to change. And,
couple of facts about change. Okay. First of all, not only are we the only ones on the planet that can think creatively, we are the only ones on the planet that can assign pain or pleasure to whatever we want. A mouse or an elephant cannot assign pleasure to abstaining from sex or food. We can.
Right.
Not that I want to, but we can.
Yeah.
Which means we can develop a new habit. Another fact, just because you heard Richard say that doesn't mean you can say, okay, I'm going to do that. Richard did something, and everyone on this call that you're going to hear from over the next several years, because that's what we have lined up, have all done the same thing. They did the hard mental labor to develop new mental habits. Here's another fact. It is a lie that it takes about 2 to 3 weeks to develop a habit. Okay? It's about 60 to 90 days. Give yourself 90 if you have not been in the habit of developing new habits regularly.
And that's 90 days in a row.
In a row.
That's not 90 days most days when it seems to work out. But I forgot Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday I got off track, but I'm back on track now.
Yeah.
Not that kind of 90 days.
That's not a habit. If it's not like breathing, it's not a habit. And the Richards of the world, Hanel points out in the Master Key system, it's so easy, yet so few are willing to do the hard mental labor. And that's what he's talking about. And I want to circle back to Think and Grow Rich. The whole book was written so people could learn 4 simple steps. The first one we covered a little bit. I'm going to circle back to it because I really believe it's Richard's strongest suit, and that is definiteness of purpose, or what he calls vision, developing that vision. Second is a positive mental attitude. Third is a plan of action expressed continuously. And then fourth is crucial. It's that mastermind alliance. Right. That's 2 or more people working in perfect harmony towards a definite major purpose. This isn't a group of 5 or 6 people that all get together that are giving each other positive vibes. There's nothing wrong with that. But a mastermind is Harry is there to keep you on track with your plan and purpose, or you're there to keep Mary Beth on track every day with her plan and purpose. That 2 to 3 minute laser call. Did you do what you said you were going to do yesterday? What are you doing today? That's it. Is it advancing it to it? So I want to talk about this mastermind alliance with you, and how that is best used by you. Do you have a few for different projects that you use? How do you go about picking a partner for yourself in the most effective way? How has that evolved for you over the years? Because I just asked you to mentor me, and fortunately you said yes, because I need a business mentor.
Right. Well, I have not done that casually. And I don't mean that word like that it's not valuable or not important. when I have put my mastermind alliances together, I've actually hired people. And I remember one of the people that I hired, I think she worked for me for about 10 years. She was my coach. She was my part of my mastermind alliance. And then I also set her up to be a full-time person to do that for a lot of other people on my team. But in a coaching session where she asked me, actually what I did was I invited her to come and speak to a group of people I was coaching. And one of the questions that she asked me, which I'd never considered before, and this was about 2000 and I don't know, 3 or 4, something like that. So whatever, 15 years ago. She said, Richard, how much money have you spent in your career on coaching? Now, coaching may sound different than a mastermind alliance. It might sound different than somebody holding you accountable, but it's in that same realm. And I had no idea. So she said, well, I want you to go add it up. So I did. I went and spent a week, and I just went back and I looked at every coach I ever hired, every program like yours that I ever immersed myself in, sometimes over and over and over again until I got it. And, you know, I don't think you and I really have anything until we can teach it. You know, people say, oh, I'm reading a book a week. Well, that's great. You know, I watch TV every day too. So what good does that do me? You know, how about instead of reading a book a week, you read a book every 3 months and you can teach it when you're done without notes. Then you own it. And then you can do something with it. So some of these programs I went back to over and over and over again until I could teach them, or at least my results were a reflection of the intention of enrolling in the program. And so the amount of money that I spent staggered me, but it was $250,000. And that was about 20 years into my career, 250 grand. Now, I know that sounds like a lot of money, but look at the paradigm that everybody like lemmings has been going through for the last 70 years in this country, where, you know, they don't think twice about throwing that kind of money at a higher education institute to basically teach them how to do a job, which is probably going to become obsolete in their lifetime 2 or 3 times. So I spent a lot of money hiring people because I wanted people who were outside my realm. I wanted people that were professionals. I wanted people whose job it was to learn what it was I wanted to do, listen to me, listen to my state of being, listen to my excuses, listen to my procrastination, my whining, my, you know, running off at the mouth about stuff, and be able to put a mirror up for me and say, hey, these 2 things are inconsistent. You know, you want to go do this. This is who you're being. And the 2 are not inconsistent. I wanted people around me that, you know, were objective and professionals. So, you know, I'm not suggesting everybody does that, but, you know, in my network marketing career, I was full-time, and my vision was to, you know, be the best I could be in the industry. I didn't really tie it to how much money I was going to make, but you know, that $250,000 probably turned into 25 million. And so that's a good return on investment. Now, I have used at times, Mark, people like you that, you know, collaborators, people that are like-minded. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about your program is anybody that gets in your program, I mean, they got automatic like-minded people. Everybody's going the same direction. And yet part of the program is that, you know, I don't know if you use accountability. Accountability is a super valuable function. I've moved away from using that word, and I call it now championing people. Because I found people resist being held accountable, right? But I think you are, and I are in alignment. Like if I'm your person, and you and I are talking, and I ask you, so Mark, did you do last week what you said you were going to do?
Yeah.
and you say no, well, I've found it's not really valuable for me to ask you why not. Right?
Yeah.
Because the why not is just going to rabbit hole of excuses and rationalization and stories and what I call BS.
Yep.
I really don't care why you didn't do it last week. There's only one thing I care about as your mastermind alliance partner is, will you do it this week?
Yeah.
And so, if you take that part of it out of the equation where everybody's chasing each other around like, oh, why didn't you do what you say you're going to do?
Yeah.
And just like, okay, last week was last week. Actually, nothing we can do about last week other than talk about it, which is really a waste of time. How about if we just talk about this coming week? And so I've used people that are like-minded, that are powerful, that are on board with what I'm doing. But mostly I've used coaches. And then, the last piece of that, which sounds kind of counterintuitive, it sounds like it's not a good idea. But Kimmy and I, it's probably maybe the most dangerous thing we do in our marriage. But we are a mastermind partner for each other.
Yeah.
We are committed to each other's path and journey and accomplishment. We're doing different things. We're on different journeys. But we share our vision and our productivity and our vulnerability with each other. And then we champion each other to get back on track.
Right.
And sometimes that ends up in a 20-minute time out of the marriage. We have such a great bond and a marriage that 20 minutes later we're back in total intimacy, and we most of the time move each other forward from challenging each other in that way. Hey, are you really being who you declared you're going to be to get this done? And sometimes all you need to do is ask that question, and that pops people back in alignment.
And I think, again, it all gets down to one thing, and I want to circle back to it. So basically, I work very differently around that stuff than Richard, although the first thing is exactly the same, very selective about it. Very selective about it. It's a process. Kissed a lot of frogs, no hard feelings with any of them, to find a few princes that were going to push me. And once I found one in business, I was with him from 78 until October of last year. And he got up in my face and was encouraging and hard and everything in between, was whatever. So you find, what it is for your person. I needed that. I didn't want any fluff, just whatever. So, but basically, it all gets down to purpose. See, with accountability partners with me, I just ask them one question. If they didn't do what they said they were going to do, say, do we need to look at your purpose? Because if you really want your wife home from work, you're going to get on the phone.
That's a good question.
Have you changed your mind? Is it now the secretary where you work? Or what are we doing? but but anyway, I think it all is really driven by purpose. When that great vignette out of that movie City Slickers, when Curly says to Billy Crystal, you all come up here about the same age, you don't get it. This is the secret to life. What your finger know one thing. You find that one thing, and nothing else don't mean shit.
Right.
When I found the Master Key system and did exactly what Richard said, I read that thing over and over and over again until I could teach it without notes. I found my passion in life, and that's the course that he's referring to. And it's all scholarship, and you get early notification at masterkeyexperience.com. But as well as the notes from Richard's wisdom here are also at that site. But basically, I found that one thing for me. That purpose drove me when I was sick, when I was discouraged, when I was angry, when I was tempted. I mean, let's face it, temptation can't get off on the path. We have to get off the path, but temptation's really freaking good at its job.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, it's really good at sucking us off the path. It's all about purpose. And you said something about intention. And and you also mentioned one of my favorite words, attention. And I think this is what happens to people is that don't do much for 90 days. Like you said, look at what you've done for the last 90 days. That'll tell you what your intention is.
Yep.
And so we have this intention and we have these pictures and we tell people about how we're going to take our husband or our wife and the family to a cruise in Europe or whatever it happens to be, right? But we're struggling to make rent. So we have this intention, but we're not paying attention. My uncle told me, who raised me, my dad died when I was 3, and I was raised by these 2 great uncles. He said, the opportunity of a lifetime comes across your state of being 3 to 5 times a day minimum if you're paying attention, whether it's a person, a resource, an opportunity, whatever. And I don't know if it's true or not, but I've chosen to believe that. And if I've been through a day without opportunity, I know I'm not paying it. I've convinced myself I'm just not paying attention. So intention, how does someone because obviously you've done a lot of these workshops and done a beautiful job with people. And I love the humility that you don't know if you've actually changed people's lives with the book, because I get the letters too, you know. How do you help them determine their real intention and then shift them to paying attention during the day, which is now that plan of action? How do you convert that? Because to me, that's how you convert the intention. I look at it in the morning, I look at it at night, but during the day, I'm paying attention. If I'm making coffee, I'm making coffee. If I'm talking to Davine, I'm talking to Davine. Right now, I'm talking to you. That's all I'm doing.
Right.
How do you get people in a proper intention, that find that one thing, and then to pay attention? Because that's the money shot.
Well, when you're talking about purpose and intention, there's a lot of different words you can use for that. Sometimes the words we use throw people into a state of, oh my gosh, I need to be much bigger than I am in order to have a purpose. So maybe it supports the audience to think about it in different terms. So all we're looking to do when you hold your finger up and say, this one thing, all we're looking to do is here's some other words, find our groove, find the theme of our life, find kind of a combination of what we really love and what we're really good at. And that may not be what we're due for a living, right? So that where people get thrown off of their groove, their bliss, their theme, their purpose, is our society puts all the value on what do you do for a living? And the reason why people don't do very well at what they do for a living compared to what they could do, in terms of achievement at their job, is that it's not their thing. It pays the bills. They can check the boxes. They can show up at 8 and go home at 5 and not get fired, but it's not their thing. And so what you got to do is you got to find your thing. Now, how do you find your thing? Well, I mean, some people find their thing by traveling the world and immersing themselves in cultures and meeting people and studying and reading, right? That's a way to do it. It's not easy to do if you hide in the cubicle, because you haven't exposed yourself to enough things to find out what might flip your dress up, right? So what you and I do, Mark, to support people in finding their purpose is we just ask them a million questions. And, the question might be, hey, Mark, if you won the lottery and you didn't have to go to work, what would you do for the rest of your life? You start to get some clues when you ask people those questions. Or if you didn't have to work, what would you do? Or, if you ran your company, how would you run it different? Like, just lots of questions to take the box that people have themselves in and explode all the sides of it, no limits, and just ask people questions. And then, like you said, what we do as coaches and what we all need to do as coaches is when people are telling us the answer, we have to be totally present to them or we'll miss it. So, this is a different application of the same thing. But when your uncle said, 2 to 3 times a day, the opportunity of a lifetime crosses our desk. Well, the opportunity of a lifetime is also to hear the truth that somebody is telling us. And there's so many applications to this in building our network marketing businesses, right? If you ask a prospect a question and you're not present to the answer, you miss the opportunity of a lifetime in their answer. You didn't hear it.
Yep.
And so how do you find that thing? You find that thing in my experience through a constant lifetime inquiry of what do I want to do? Who do I want to be? That's the biggest one.
Right.
Maybe some things like what do you want to have, but those aren't very important. It's really lies in what do you want to do for fun, for contribution, for self-expression, for accomplishment, for service. Like, what do you want to do? But the bigger question is, who do you want to be? And if you and I are in that conversation for an hour or two, and I'm totally present to your answers, and I keep asking you more questions, what we're going to find, Mark, is we're going to find your thing. And I'm not going to tell you what your thing is. You're going to tell me what your thing is. And all I am is a facilitator by being present, listening to your answers, and then asking you the next question. And the next question is just looking to clarify, to prioritize, to clarify, to prioritize, and just get it down to the point where you go, yes, if I could do that, if I could be that,
Right.
oh my God,
Right.
that would be amazing.
Right.
And of course, you're probably not talking about your job that way.
Right.
So now, once you find out what your thing is, and really important thing about your thing is you're not stuck with it. So you decide this year, 2019, that your thing is whatever, right? Saving dogs from being neutered and spayed, right? I don't know, right? Saving dogs. But that might not be your thing next year. So, like, what you want to do is stay in a constant conversation and an inquiry about what lights your fire. Who are you? What do you want to do with your life? And the being part continues to evolve. What can change is the doing. Like, how am I going to express that who I want to be? Now, to answer your question, how do you teach people to pay attention? Well, there's 2 things in play there. Number 1 is when you change what you're thinking about, what your intention is, and you change it thoroughly, completely, like you're immersed in it. And the beginning part of that process is, yes, put up some pictures and put up some posters and have some affirmations and read your vision. And why do you do that stuff? Because that's environmental communication, and it reminds you what you need to be thinking about. But so you start that process of immersing yourself in your new vision. And then what that triggers is a neurological device that's built into all of us. And I hate this kind of terminology, but I don't know what else to call it because it is called something. And it's the reticular activating device in our brain, which kind of works like this. So, before you decided that what you wanted to own was a yellow Volkswagen Bug, before you decided that, there were still the same number of yellow Volkswagen Bugs driving around. But once you decided you wanted one, all of a sudden you notice they're everywhere. Oh my gosh, I saw one today. I saw one yesterday. I saw one last week. The same yellow Volkswagen Bugs were there. You just didn't see them.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't you see them? Because you didn't have the intention to see them. And this device in our brain is actually designed to keep us from going into complete meltdown overload with information. Because what it does is it only allows us to see what we have said is important to us. Now, this sort of cuts both ways, folks, because if what you're thinking about, what your intention is, that this isn't going to work, that people say no, that people who say they're going to show up for an appointment don't show up for an appointment, that people lie to me, if that's what you're thinking about, then that's what you're going to see. That's what you're going to manifest because that's what you see. And so this is a very magical, complicated process that is actually super simple to deploy in your life. And so I want to like back it all away and just dumb it down to, okay, what is transformation about and how does it work? It's as simple as this. Everything rises and falls on motivation. These are my words, okay? So when you hear somebody else, Mark or anybody else talk about this stuff, don't like listen to them like, oh, he's right or he's right or he's right. Because we all use different words and different ways of saying it. Look for the common themes in stuff. So when I say everything rises and falls on motivation, what I mean by that is, what is motivation? It's that magical energy. It's physical, it's spiritual, it's intellectual, it's emotional. It's that energy that causes this body, which includes my voice and my mind and everything, to leap into action. And, you know, most of us in this podcast are, you know, we're network marketers, right? So what's the number one thing you need to leap into action on a regular basis to be successful? You need to talk to people, right? That's a big leap. Well, if you get motivated enough, you will talk to people. And then some people say, well, yeah, I might talk to people, but I don't know what to say to them. If you're motivated, you'll figure it out, right? And you say, oh, yeah, I'm talking to people, but they're all saying no. If you're motivated, you'll talk to somebody else. And then you'll come back and talk to that person again 3 months later. It all lives in motivation. Motivation causes us to act. And it causes us to also attract, right? Because when you are out in the world looking for who do I want to hang my hat on, who do I want to associate with, who do I want to hang out with, you're not looking for the people that are hiding in a cubicle, that are in a funk, that are all bummed out, right? That are negative, that are sad sacks. We're all looking for who are the people that are on fire going somewhere in life. So we attract people with our motivation. So where does motivation come from? It comes from that intention, that purpose, that vision, whatever you want to call it. So how do I change my life? Get in a conversation about who you want to be and what you want to do. You don't have to hire a coach to be in that conversation. You can be in that conversation with anybody. Just say, hey, let's get in a conversation. Let's talk about this. You ask me these questions. I'll ask you these questions. Just get in a discovery conversation and then take the new you that you've created. And remember, you're the only species on the planet that has the ability to do this. So take advantage of it. Take the new you that you've created and document it. Document it in writing, document it in affirmations, document it in photos, document it in mini movies, and study it. Study it, study it, study it, study it, study it every day. Not every other day, not every third day, but every day. And do it for, 90 days? No. I mean, you're right, Mark. It may take 90 days, but how long do you do it? You do it as long as I sent books to Oprah. Until.
Do it until.
And to do it until. How long do I need to, personally recruit people in my network marketing business? Until it explodes. Next.
Right.
How
Right.
long do I need to prospect this one person who said no? Well, until they say yes, or until their legal department sends you a cease and desist.
Right. Right. So there's one other piece here that a guy like Richard would never tell you because it's not in his consciousness, because it's just who he is. Be honest. That's what you have to do. You got to be like Richard here. He's just honest. Okay. So when you sit down with wifey or your best friend from the gym, don't pretend that your dad is listening, or your mom, or your high school teacher, or whatever. This is you. This is your life. Be honest about what you want. If you don't want the dog and the 3 kids and all that, then be honest about it. Okay. Do you know what I'm saying? Some people aren't. Stop pretending to want the things that the institutions that have conditioned all of us into not thinking for ourselves, or tried to anyway, turned us into sheep or trick ponies or whatever. This has always been the appeal of things like network marketing. But whether you're if you're a sculptor, you got to get a chisel and hit stone every day. Okay. And again, as Richard was saying, maybe you love to sculpt and you're never going to be Da Vinci. But if that's what gives you pleasure, if that's your one thing, and you need to pump gas to help support the house so that you can sculpt, that's fine. But baby, pick up that chisel and hit stone every day. That's the joy. That's the thing that keeps you going. That's your heart's desire. So speak from your heart. Just so many takeaways here. But the main thing is, once you have that conversation, make a promise to yourself today and keep that promise to have that earnest, honest conversation. Like I said, Richard won't tell you that because he's just honest. It's not in his consciousness to sit down with someone and have a dishonest conversation. Okay. The stuff that
I would use is authenticity.
Authenticity.
So the power of purpose is aligned with truth. So there's something in our psyche, something in our spiritual base, our emotional base, our intellectual base, that whole concoction of chemicals, that when it speaks truth, it lights up like crazy. And it doesn't have any appreciation for what Mark's talking about, what your parents thought you should do, or what society thinks you should do, or what education thinks you should do, or what your neighbor thinks you should do. The purpose that you're looking for could care less about any of those opinions, any of those shoulds. So if you try to bring those conversations, well, I think I should be really, really successful because, that's what my dad wanted. Your spiritual base doesn't resonate with that at all. That it considers that to be BS. That's inauthentic. That is a conversation for your dad to have about your dad. And we're talking about you, and you're probably different. And until you own that difference, that uniqueness, that authenticity, and you let go of performing for other people, as long as you're a circus act, you're going to get paid like a circus act.
Yep. And feel insecure.
Yeah, you got to be the real deal.
Yeah,
I want to make a note, Mark, that
sure,
that we dread precisely and hope vaguely. That is not my quote.
Right. It's
so
Paul Valéry, 1871 to 45. He was a French poet.
Yeah, that's not.
That's not him. And to help you with that word hope, because I know you're not fond of that, I know you know the great Annie Feinstein, who's built massive downlines.
Sure.
She went through the course, and the master keys, and she decided hope is now going to mean to her as a networker, help other people evolve their consciousness. So hope, help other people evolve, and I've stolen that. I'll pass it on to you.
Very good.
So
Good.
yeah, she's just delightful, that one.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, the big takeaway for me here is a very easy way to convert Hanel's phrase, the hard mental labor that so few are willing to do. A very easy way to do that is to get the stuff up around the house, recordings of yourself on your phone, reading this vision that you have and these things, and then move them every few days so
Sure.
that they don't become commonplace. These will pull what are known as psychological triggers. And if you really want to do yourself a favor, you see those shapes back there.
Yep.
You look for those shapes, put them individually on your vision board, and then look for them while you're out and try to associate them with your vision board. And they'll start silently or unconsciously pulling psychological triggers for you. More for that when you get enrolled in the course for free, of course. But anyway, Richard, that's my big takeaway is constantly, day in and day out, feed yourself that instead of reruns of Everyone Loves Raymond. Every time, put this thing next to your remote. And every time you look at that remote or next to your YouTube, okay, wherever YouTube is on your computer, and every time you go to click on that or pick up that remote, pick up that vision instead, or at least know that you're making a choice.
Yeah.
You know,
Here's a analogy for people that'll help them understand the power of consistency. I call it compounding consistency. And it's sort of the soft art and math of what happens when you do the same thing over and over and over and over again every day. And the analogy is compounding money. So in my book, The 4-Year Career, there's a chart in there that shows us what happens if you take a penny and you double it every day for a month. It ends up being $5 million, doubled every day for a month. But that's not the really profound number. The really profound number is, what's it worth if you doubled it every day? I mean, every other day. If you doubled it every other day because you forgot, or you got off track, or you got distracted, or whatever, right? What's the penny worth if you double it every other day instead of every day? And if you want to know what's missing in why isn't my business growing into momentum? Why aren't I transforming at the rate that I want to transform? It's because when it comes to the consistency of the work that needs to be done to transform, we're doubling the penny probably not even every other day. And so when it comes to building a network marketing business, we're building $168 businesses when it would be so simple to build a $5 million business. We just have to make it maybe the top 3 most important things we do every day, right, instead of doing it when we remember or when it's convenient.
I think that's such a great point because I'm Polish and Italian, so it took me a long time to figure out that my top priority didn't mean that it was the thing that I put the most time into.
Right.
I don't know why I couldn't figure. It took me 3 years to figure that out. Right. So I made my part-time business my top priority, and those 10 hours were the sacred cow. They weren't the thing that I put the most time in, but there was nothing that was going to interrupt that. And I'd put my baseball hat on backwards, and the kids knew when they looked through the window in my office, if the cut wasn't more than 7 stitches, they were going to have to wait, to go to the hospital. That was that. So what Richard's really talking about is that repetition creates, as he was talking about before, in the brain, what we're really doing is creating a new neural net. And this is replacing the old one that had a negative thing. And it takes time for the old neural net to atrophy, a new one to form. Thoughts are vibrations. Those vibrations are going to impel towards it whatever it is vibrating out. This is a receiver. Now, I want to tell you something about your brain. The mechanism is perfect. Most of us are inexperienced or inefficient operators. Richard's given you some great tips on how to be a better operator of this magnificent mechanism in a very blue-collar way. So get over to the site, masterkeyexperience.com, grab the notes, share them with your friends. It'll make your friends happy. If they're happier, you're 15% happier. And of course, we end this call the way we always do with our 9 questions, sort of to get to know another side of Richard and all our brilliant guests who have figured out those 2 things, right? It all begins in the mind, and they got off the couch and did it, okay? So, Richard, best thing you ever ate?
The best eggs Benedict anybody's ever served me.
Okay. Best place you ever visited?
Old Town Havana, Cuba.
Nice. Favorite word or sound?
Waves crashing.
Least favorite word or sound?
Hope. Till today. Nan gave me a definition of it.
Complete the following 3 phrases. Love is.
Life.
Money is.
Useful.
Life is.
A journey.
If God exists, when you get to the pearly gates, you'd love to hear him say,
it's okay that you didn't believe in me. You get a pass. It's okay that you didn't believe the whole pearly gates story. Here.
So
what I want to do is back over there behind that door is the best 18 holes of golf you've ever imagined in your life. You get to play for free for eternity.
I love that. The 18 holes outside your back door aren't too bad either.
Oh, they're pretty good.
They're pretty good. Hey, thank you so much. Again, you can get the notes as well as everything that Richard's doing, including this industry changer for his industry coming in May of 2020. It's a shift. It's a shift. It's huge. It's big. I'm behind it 100%. And I've never promoted anybody in this industry this way. I'm with this 100%. Okay, it was my idea. He stole it. He always does. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Anyway,
always says that too.
masterkeyexperience.com. Get there. We got Richard's notes. We got the whole interview. You can see it live. In audio, video, whatever you want. Share it with your friends. Peace be the journey. God bless you, Richard. May the 18 holes bless you, Richard. Peace. Okay. All right.
Mahalo for listening. The Taking Charge podcast is a place that you can count on to receive the truth. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, please make sure to leave a review and subscribe to our channel. The show notes and links to anything we discussed today can be found at the website, takingchargethepodcast.com. Be sure to reserve your spot for the Master Key Experience. Early notification scholarships are limited. Mahalo and aloha.